Okay, the title of this session is Prospering. It's okay, I speak louder than most people, don't worry, you're good. Is Prospering Within New York City's Bureaucratic Maze. For all those that don't know who I am, my name is Mark Hertz. From Mark Hertz Group of Companies, Mark Hertz Company that handles violations, Mark Hertz Associates that handles light plumbing jobs, light electrical applications, and various sets of compliance, including Local 97, which we have a joint venture with Latitude Compliance that does a great job on Local 97, one of the premier companies in New York City. Mark Hertz Build, which is a joint venture with Build Architects, where we do expediting from the ground up, or renovation, or whatever it may be, which we have a joint venture with Build Architects. And Mark Hertz Environmental, which handles lead and mold testing. So far we're MHA, MHB, MHC, and MHE. We'll get to MHD in a second, or in a few minutes. So I've been in this space in the real estate world. I'm a third generation in the real estate. My grandfather, Olav Shalom, my father, Olav Shalom, and I've been in this space since, if you really want to know the truth, October 31, 1984. For all those that exactly want to know how long I've been here. First and foremost, I'd like to give a shout out to my son, Yosef, who's here, who has really upped my game and made the office, even though he doesn't work with us full time, but made the office into a different environment and brought us onto technology, which I was never on before. Until recently, I did not know how to cut and paste. I knew how to use the scissors, and I knew how to use Elmer's glue. Yosef, thank you for teaching me. I want to thank PCON, which if one wants to know what PCON stands for, I asked the question last year before I spoke. It stands for Property Management Construction Conference. Don't ask me how that goes into PCON. I have no idea, because there's no M in PCON, so I can't tell you. But that's what I was told by Yedidya Liebler. So I'd like to thank Yedidya Liebler for inviting me to speak. Isaac Seifer, who was involved, Chaya Baum, Esti Rappaport, who handled, and Chaya Baum, who handled a lot of the technical issues, Yossi Wasserman, who handled a lot of the PR, Ushi Teitelbaum, and Pessy Weiss. I'd like to thank them all because they had many a sleepless night and much difficult time dealing with all the logistics that go into doing these events. If any of you have made simchas, I'm sure you know what it's like doing an event and dealing with the stress and the details, etc. You know, years ago I wrote an article that the title of the article was, "It's Not Your Grandfather's City." What that means is, it's a new city. It's a new world. And we all know that we live in the world of AC, not PC, not BC. AC is after COVID. BC was before COVID, in case anyone thought it meant anything else. And since COVID, things have changed. But as I'll say later, the COVID excuse when it comes to violations or judgments or penalties is really not applicable. And nor does the city want to hear it, and nor is it something that will have any credence or have any benefit in using it. But with that said, the bureaucracy is greater and greater than it's ever been. And, you know, I have a note for myself, be positive. I am positive because I believe we're in a cycle now, and real estate world has always been cyclical, and right now it's a little bit more of a difficult time. And the city council nor the state legislature is really here for the benefit of the real estate world. But on the other hand, now is a time to hunker down and to focus on your buildings and see what you can do to make your building better than it was before. So that ultimately, as someone told me recently in the name of one of the big people in the real estate industry, but he didn't give me permission to say his name, owning real estate really is about the 3 R's. And the 3 R's are repairs, rent roll, strengthening your rent roll as much as possible, and last but not least, rent collection. And if you focus on the 3 R's and you do the repairs, I didn't say you have to do work that would be J51 tax abatement or MCI oriented, but at least basic repairs, providing heat and hot water, making sure the apartments are painted and there's no peeling paint. We'll get into lead issues in a moment. You're only going to enhance the value of your real estate, and by enhancing the value of your real estate, you will ultimately end up with a better rent roll and a better bottom line. But there are many gray areas in the real estate world, and there are many deadlines. And most people do not understand this and do not know it because you're busy doing other things in your building, such as your rent roll, collecting your rents, such as, unfortunately, taking tenants to court when it's necessary, such as complying with various deadlines, and hence that's why you need an expediter or someone that can help you that does that from the center of their desk, and that's all they focus on. And they also know their ways through the bureaucracy. The last but not least, before I get into the meat of this conversation, in the good old days, New York City agencies did not collaborate with each other, did not speak to each other, but we have seen time and time again, and I'll just mention one new law that now got strongly enforced, Local Law 71 of 2022, for self-closing doors. It's a joint venture of HPD, Department of Buildings, and the fire department based on that fire that took place a year and a half or 2 years ago in the Bronx on a Sunday, and 17 people passed away, and they now join together. And they're very strong in being together with each other and knowing, each agency knowing what the other one is doing. So albeit that we live now in an uncertain market and in difficult times, we know, I mean, the economists say that within the next 2 years things will change. Hopefully, a lot of things will depend on the political world, but the time is, as I said before, to focus on making your building a better building and filing for those filings that you need, to which Mark Hertz Build would be glad to help you with, and making your building a stronger building and a nicer building. You know, we all love having our smartphones. Smartphones are a great thing, but in essence, forgive me for saying it this way, we're no different than dogs. Dogs have a leash around them, and their owner leads them in the direction they want. Well, the building department, HPD, the fire department, and all of those agencies also have smartphones. And many a time I have seen where an inspection was arranged by any one of these departments, a pre-arranged inspection, an inspector's walking down a block and sees in a different property on the same block around the corner that someone's doing work, and they're not sure if there's a permit or the work looks dangerous, because safety is a major factor, and they go onto their smartphone and they check on Department of Buildings, and they see in 2 seconds if one has a permit or does not have a permit. So while smartphones are great, and we all enjoy them, we all use them, I don't know, I find sometimes on a Shabbos afternoon my hip starts vibrating. I don't know why. I promise you I'm not wearing my phone on Shabbos afternoon, or Yom Kippur, or whatever the case may be. But we all like them, but they have their downside to them. And it's not a simple thing. And as I said before, the COVID excuse of saying that, you know, I couldn't do this and this because of COVID, or that and that because of COVID, it's yesterday's news. It didn't work even during the heat of COVID. It surely is not working today. To get into the details, Department of Buildings uses algorithms. And very often when they want to write a violation, an algorithm that they use is they look for cracks, spoiling or deteriorating facades, and hence, because of that, they'll go ahead and they'll write violations, class 1 violation. They'll check out if you fixed the violation that was previously issued. So ECB violations have 2 parts to them. They have the hearing portion and the correction portion, and they're 2 individual portions to them, and they both have to be done. Because if we don't take care of both of them, we will end up with additional penalties, which is not what anyone wants, nor does it help anyone's bottom line. As you all know, or a lot of you may know, the city can forget to write violations, neglect writing violations, and when they're good and ready, since they write the laws, they will write the violations. They recently came out with violations for boilers. They wrote, just in April, they wrote violations for 2022, that those that did not do their yearly boiler inspections in the year of 2022, and that carries a $1,000 penalty. And in June, in someone's ingenious fashion, all 2 of them were written on the same day, so it makes it harder to figure out on June 23rd, they wrote violations for 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, for anyone that did not do the yearly boiler inspections. And if you have multiple boilers in your building, it's not just one violation. It's not, years ago, it was per building. Today's day and age, it's per boiler. So if you have multiple boilers in your building, you can end up with multiple penalties. Do your boiler inspections. They're due by December 31st. Do your elevator inspections. They are going to be coming out with elevator inspections. They put out a service notice not long ago that the next thing they're going to be doing is elevator inspections. Do your compliance. Compliance is very, very important. And on the other hand, not only is it important, but it's also massive savings of money and will keep your bottom line strong. If one does a limited alteration application, if one does a plumbing inspection, a plumbing application with the city, to remove a boiler, don't forget and tell your vendor that not only do they have to file the application to remove the boiler, but they also have to file a particular form called an OP49 to remove the boiler from activity on the building department's website. And the building department's website is no picnic. Of course, we used to have a system called the BIS system, BIS, Building Information System. The city, in its infinite wisdom, went ahead and developed a system called DOB Now. I repeat to you what I read in Crane's New York Business a few years ago. It cost the city $28 million to write the system DOB Now. Who in this room would need $28 million to write a system? Nobody. Nobody raised their hand, so it must be nobody. Why the city spent so much money? I have no idea. It's the system that is hated by all. It's hated by real estate owners, developers, managers, the private world. It is hated by everyone that works in Department of Buildings, and it is hated by all the judges at ECB and all the attorneys for DOB that represent. There is nobody that likes the system. But that being said, someone friended me on LinkedIn last night and said the city always comes up with these new things so that they can collect money. That being said, this is the space you work in. If this is the space you work in and this is the space that makes your livelihood, then our job is to be compliant. Nobody likes paying taxes. Nobody likes driving 55. Nobody likes, when they want to lose weight, not being able to eat cake and nosh. I've been trying it for over 60 years to eat cake every weekend and not gain weight. It has not worked. So this is the space we work in, this is what we need to do, and this is how we have to be compliant. We're all familiar with the parking garage. I don't know how many people have parking garages. We're all familiar, or maybe in their buildings, we're all familiar with the parking garage disaster, collapse that happened on Ann Street. By the way, I used to park in that garage all the time. Thank the Almighty Lord, I was not there when it fell. But years ago, I used to park there all the time. It was a great, great garage. But that being said, they overloaded, according to the city, they overloaded with the amount of cars that they had, weight per square foot, et cetera, et cetera. The city now is requiring that, well, the city for a while has been requiring that every 6 years you have to do an inspection on a garage. Facade is every 5 years, garage is every 6 years. That will be changing in the near future. Every collapse that happens and every disaster that happens and every person that dies, unfortunately, or gets injured, unfortunately, that creates stronger laws and tougher laws for us. I will tell you the crane issue that happened a few weeks ago, the city is not going to be doing anything about, because that was simply put an overheating of the motor, and everything they did right. The construction site was reopened within about 48 to 72 hours because they did everything right. Yes, some people were minorly injured. They should all be well, but they did everything that they had to do, and they did it properly. I am sure that everyone in this room is up on the news. So if you're up on the news, who has seen what our mayor recently came out with about sheds? He wants all the sheds down throughout the city, and they have to be down within a certain amount of time. Even if you put up the shed because you don't have the money now to fix the facade or to fix the lintels or to fix the parapet wall of the building. Anyone doesn't know what those things are, please let me know. They want all the sheds down, and technically they only want sheds up for 90 days, and then you can file for extensions and keep going from there. But if you're not going to be compliant, if one is not going to be compliant, they're looking at potential penalties of $6,000 per month. $6,000 per month translates into $72,000 a year. The last my mother told me, that's a lot of money. And that does affect the bottom line greatly. Last, on the DOB thing, on the DOB issues, to my knowledge, from reading my notes, electronic bikes. You rent out a store to a bicycle repair company or to any whoever it may be, and they have electronic bikes. They are charging the electronic bikes in your building, the lithium batteries. So they say, the fire department says, the building department says, creates a fire, especially if they're overloaded, but that's any electricity that's overloaded, creates a fire. It's a problem. You have to know what's going on inside your buildings. You have to go to your buildings, you have to be there, you have to see, you have to have a feeling for your buildings. Or your managing agents have to know what's going on in the buildings. You can't be an absentee landlord. Moving on to HPD. Mark Hertz group of companies recently partnered with Sarah Spera, formerly of Mold Detectives, now the director of lead and mold operations through Mark Hertz Environmental. We are doing testing of lead and mold. As we all know, Local 01 of 2004, Local 31 of 2020, you're required to do lead testing on all apartments. Depending the age of the people living in the apartment will depend on what work needs to be done and how you have to handle it and what you need to do. Audits. Everyone loves 619 and 620 violations when they get them from HPD. And they're audited and they want your records from 10 years back or from the last when you bought the building till now, etc. Audits are caused generally by a Department of Health violation, a DOH violation. A child is in school, child's not learning, studying properly, learning properly, child's brought to a doctor, child goes for a physical at a doctor. Doctor is a mandated reporter. The mandated reporter has to report to the Department of Health. Those are the laws. The Department of Health gets notice, they issue a violation or an order to abate or something to that effect. At that point, you will most likely get an audit request. If an inspector comes out, sees what looks like chip peeling paint, or he tests the paint and it's lead specifically on the friction surfaces, or if there's a lot of violations, specifically lead violations, you're going to get an audit. We can help you through that audit. We can help you put your paperwork into order. We can help you get around it. We can help you deal with it. And on top of that, I had a client who had more than one, who's had federal audits from the Department of Justice. We like the Federal Department of Justice. We don't like the Federal Department of Justice. I'm not asking Donald Trump what his feeling is about the Federal Department of Justice, because I know what his feeling is. He tells it to us all the time. But Department of Justice, Federal Department of Justice is coming out and has come out with a lot of audit requests as well. And you need an attorney at that point to represent you. Be on top of your paperwork. Having meticulous paperwork and having your paperwork in order is very important. Without that, you're behind the 8 ball. Save everything. Whether you save it electronically, whether you save it like me, old school on papers, that doesn't make a difference. But save it as much as you can because you need to have it. You're going to need it. City came out with new abatement laws. We all know there's a requirement for testing by 2025. Now they're trying to pass, it passed in the city council. To my knowledge, it has not yet been signed by the mayor. They're requesting by 2027, all apartments that had tested positive should be abated. It was passed in the city council. There are only 51 or 53 members of the city council. It was passed by the city council on a thing of 36, if I remember, to 7. There are a few abstentions, a few people not there. The city council, as one city council person once told me, the city council currently is not overly friendly to the real estate industry. But that being said, this is the space we're in. We have to be compliant. Hopefully, the mayor won't sign this bill. Because if the mayor signs this bill, it's going to become pretty costly. That requires lobbying by the real estate industry and trying to get the mayor not to sign it. But not every violation requires an abatement. And that's where you need a professional. That's where you need companies like Mark Hertz Environmental or other companies that are out there that can help you figure out, do I need abatement? Do I not need abatement? Can I contest? Can I not contest? The biggest organization that contests lead violations is NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority. But they can do what they want. We unfortunately can't. We unfortunately have to be compliant because we are not a multi-billion-dollar housing authority, which NYCHA is. So it is, we have to deal within the space that we are. But there's one positive news. Everyone is familiar with the term PPP, right? Who doesn't know the term PPP here? Everybody knows the term PPP, right? We all try to get PPP. Any business owners try to get PPP at the beginning of COVID. There is funding for lead abatement under PPP grants. PPP stands in this case for Primary Prevention Program, a program that is jointly being run by HPD and Department of Health to abate your lead violations. The only question is that one has to look at the PPP program is there are a lot of stipulations and there are a lot of compliance factors. After you get a PPP grant, which can be between $8,000 and $10,000 per apartment, whom can you rent these apartments to? How long is HPD and Department of Health going to be on top of you and watching you and being down your throat? That you have to do your research. But there is such a program. Lead violations, as I said before, should be contested very often, but you need someone that understands the space and someone understands a lead violation and the difference between the different order numbers as to how to handle that. Self-closing doors, as we said before, Local Law 71 of 2022. The city is going to be putting, I forget if it's 200 or 300 buildings to audit, to inspect those buildings if their doors are self-closing. And whenever they come out for a regular dismissal request inspection, one of the things they look at is all the common areas self-closing doors. So make sure the doors are self-closing. Even the roof door that you have the panic bar on and you have a chain, you have a closer, it's got to close all the way. It can't close most of the way that the wind is going to keep it open. They open the door and they watch it close. If it closes, good. If it doesn't close, they're on you. Last but not least, on the HPD space, Israel, here goes your shout out. Registration renewals, Israel works with me in my office. Registration renewals are due by September 1. September 1 is Israel's birthday. That's his shout out. He's our Director of Business Development. Israel, good friend. HPD renewals are due by September 1. From the middle of May, you can start filing them, and by September 1, they're due to be filed. The reason for an HPD registration, or what was known as MDR registrations or HPD registration, is the city needs to know whom to contact. Should something happen in the middle of the night, they need to know whom to contact. They need to know, or else you're going to find that there's going to be emergency repair charges because the city is going to do work themselves. There's a fire in a building on a weekend, on a holiday. They're going to do the work themselves. You don't want them to do the work themselves. Technically, also, you can't bring a tenant to court, to landlord-tenant court, if your HPD registration is not up to date. It does cost a whopping of $13 to do it. Anyone that has a problem with that, please let me know. I'm sure I can find a sponsor for you that would be willing to make a tax-deductible contribution to your building. Please take care of it. Please get your registrations updated. It's cheaper than paying emergency repair charges. It's cheaper than not being able to collect your rent. It's the best thing you can do, and it's not that difficult. Yes, it did get more difficult, and there are more pages to it, and they ask questions about lead and other things such as that, but please get it done. And if you need help doing it, Israel, to call him before his birthday. You can wish him an early happy birthday. Please call him, and he'll be glad to be of assistance to you and to work on that for you, with you and for you. Department of Health. Pest violations can be issued on vacant lots and construction sites. Construction sites all require for there to be pest services going on because of the rat problem, which, as we all have seen, the mayor having a rat czar. I would hate to have that title. Almighty Lord, have mercy on my soul. A rat czar in the city that can go ahead and take care of rat violations. But there has been a substantial uptick in the amount of pest violations. Please be vigilant, and also be vigilant at your buildings that you don't have openings in the basement or your garbage is not strewn around and your garbage pails are covered, because they will be and do write violations. ECB, as I said before, an ECB violation, Environmental Control Board, the Environmental Control Board does not write any violations. They do not have inspectors. There are 14 agencies that their violations are adjudicated by ECB. ECB stands for Environmental Control Board, which they are under the aegis of OATH, Office of Administrative Tribunals and Hearings. They have hearing officers. They used to be called them judges. They have hearing officers. They have administrative staff. They do not have inspectors. But an ECB violation written by Department of Buildings or the Fire Department does require not only going to a hearing and certifying correction or curing the violation within the cure date to avoid the hearing, the penalty and hearing, but it also requires certifying correction. And when one goes to get a C of O, to attempt to get the final C of O on a building, as architect Phil Toscano will tell you, or any other expediter that's here in the room. I know Michael Jaffa's not here now, okay, from Jack Jaffa Associates, or David Hoffman will tell you, when one goes to get their final C of O on a building, this will affect you. When one goes to finance a building, this will affect you if you do not certify correction. I beg you, don't stop halfway. My mother used to tell me when she sent me to sweep the floor, don't leave out that corner. That corner is part of the kitchen as well. Make sure you sweep when you sweep the whole floor. Please do it, and make sure you do the entire floor. Make sure you get the whole thing done. Our experience can save you more than just the penalty. Years ago, I had a violation for a client that he would have had an $800 penalty. But he was building at that time what was going to be the tallest building in Brooklyn, in downtown Brooklyn. Had he been found guilty on the $800 violation, he would have been subject to work without a permit penalty. At that time, if I remember correctly, I remember at that time it was 10 times the filing fee or 14 times the filing fee. Today, the work without a permit civil penalty is 21 times the filing fee, but there is a cap on it. It's a minimum $6,000 on a commercial building, but there's a cap on it of $15,000. In those days, there was no cap. It would have cost him over $800,000 for a work without a permit civil penalty, besides the little thing of the $800 ECB penalty. Nobody, anyone here wants to pay an $800,000 penalty to the city of New York? We have a client now that unfortunately didn't do his facade reports on time. He needs to pay the city, I don't remember if it's $103,000 or $105,000. But just let me tell you, there's one problem. The city system cannot accept more than $99,000, and you can't make partial payments. So now what do? You have to go to the facade unit and ask the facade unit to make this building be able to pay its penalty. And if you pay it by credit card, so there's the convenience fee. The convenience fee only adds on about approximately another $2,500 or $2,600. So if it wasn't, you weren't paying enough at $103, okay, no problem. Please give us a non-tax deductible contribution for the convenience fees. Thank you very much. Don't wait and don't look for an email or a letter in the mail from the mayor saying thank you for your donation and your contribution. You will not get that, and you will not get a tax deductible receipt. So don't think of using it to file with your income tax. But ECB violations, very often, the decision can be appealed. Appeals takes time. Again, we're dependent on someone else. We're dependent on the appeals board. They should sometimes be appealed. Or if something's in default, it should either be reopened, or if it's past the time for reopening, there are some times that we can do other methodologies, such as filing an Article 78 proceeding, which we'd be glad to help you. Mark Hertz Company would be glad to help you. And very often we are able to get reopened for a new hearing, and at that time negotiate it and settle it down. So if you have a defaulted penalty of $25,000 or $12,500 or $10,000, our fees will be more than worth your while, and so will any of the other expeditors that are here, that are in this space, that do this. This is not a competition between me and other expeditors. We're all here just to make a living, support our families, and do the right thing. So feel free to use anyone you want. Of course, I'd love for you to come to our office. It would be my honor and pleasure to be of service to you, and those that work with me would be glad to help you. Do not think that if a violation is written in a tenant's space, it's the tenant's responsibility. The only agency that writes to a tenant's name sometimes is the fire department. The building department never writes to a tenant's name. And that's because of a quirk in the law. But it has to be done. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rabbi Yitzchak Saftlis from Bottom Line Design. I appreciate that. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nהיה b'dvaro. Don't think that it can rely on the tenant. And if the tenant says to you that even though the violation is in your name, in your ownership name, that they're going to go, would you give someone else your credit card bill that put money on your credit card and tell them, you pay it? What happens if they don't pay it? Whose credit rating does it affect? Yours or theirs? They were thrilled to spend money on buying a new sofa or a new car or clothing for some event on your credit card. But if it's not paid, who will it affect? Whose credit rating goes down? If they don't attend the hearing and do the best, whose credit rating, who gets affected? Bill them back, charge back the tenant? Yeah, of course. That's a personal thing. That's between you and the tenant. That's between you and whoever it may be, who, if you're a contractor and you did the foolish thing of lending out your license, which I'll never understand why people do, but if you did that, even so, go ahead and make sure you attend the hearing, because when it comes time to renew your license, you will not be able to renew your license if you have open ECB penalties. The City Council, in its infinite wisdom, as of July 30th, has taken away the opportunity for us to mitigate certain penalties. Mitigate is to reduce certain penalties. Certain penalties, they're either the base penalty, what's called the minimum, or the maximum, or the default penalty. Rarely does the maximum penalty get issued. I've only had it once in my entire time since 1984, but that was a building that was a continuous violator. But a default penalty you will have if you don't attend the hearing, and the base penalty you will have if you didn't correct it. Changes sometimes find themselves to be beneficial. Here is one that's beneficial. Chalk one up for the private industry. The city appears that they are not really focusing very much on fireman service and on elevators any longer. It appears that they're not writing ECB violations for that any longer. We believe that it has to do with all the expeditors and representatives and private building owners and homeowners that have contested them, and they've realized that they can't write because of certain quirks in the code. They were wrong in writing those violations as ECBs. So that's chalk one up for us at large. Marty, don't go out yet. I'm just about to get to you. Local Law 97, going into place in 2024. Penalties will be, you can go out after this, Marty. Penalties will be stiff. Penalties will be heavy. That sounds terrible. But the city has been priming for this for a long time. They've been doing benchmark, that a building over 25,000, first it was 50,000 square feet, now 25,000 square feet, has to do its energy efficiency reporting and has to report how much gas, oil, et cetera, that they use. Now the city's pushing to lower your sustainability. Yossi Wassman, give him a thank you, please. He's one of the people that set this up. Shout out. The city is now, the next thing is to enforce Local Law 97. There are incentives to do Local Law 97. There are loans that one can get to do Local Law 97, to do sustainability. Do not give up on it, because the penalties, and I can't calculate them because my brain doesn't allow that much math to be in my head, so forgive me, but the penalties are high and they're stiff. But there's a great company out there, started by Marty Weiss. Whoa, Marty, I'm tongue twisted. Marty Weisbrot of Latitude Compliance. We've done, Marty, how many did we do? 3 or 4 webinars together about this issue. The issue is important. Don't neglect it. At least start doing it. There probably will be extensions. There will be, if they see that you're working on these things on Local Law 97, they will most likely, I mean, I've been told by a number of, I believe, inside people, they will most likely allow you to continue working on it without penalties. But the penalties will be high and they will be stiff. We all know that, here I'm ending, so if I'm boring, forgive me, just a little bit to end. We all know a story from the Talmud, from the Gemara, of one of the great rabbis, Rav Preda, who learned with a student 400 times. And the student did not understand what they were learning 400 times until they learned with him 401. And a voice went out from heaven and said that he was a great man, that he did this, that he used to spend the time and teach the student 400 times. It's not for no good reason that the voice from heaven did not go out to say great things about the student, because the voice from heaven didn't either want to repeat itself 400 times. Who would want to repeat themselves 400 times? But I do, and I would like to repeat myself 400 times. Hence, for the next hour, I will be at my booth. Feel free to come and ask me whatever it may be, whatever you didn't understand, whatever you want to know. I'd be glad to explain it. I love explaining things. Let's not forget, safety, 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 safety. The city is focused on safety. 3 R's. 3 R's. I sound like Rabbi Pesach Krohn when he finishes his speech. He reviews the whole thing. 3 R's. The 3 R's. Repairs, repairs, repairs. Focus on enhancing your rent roll as best as you can. I know there's no longer MCIs. I know there's no longer 421As. I know there's no longer J51s. I know there's no longer individual apartment increases. We all know that. We have to deal with that space. But still, keep focusing on it. I beg you. And don't forget, your rent collections. Your rent collections, what lets you pay your expenses, what lets you eat. Last but not least, the Mark Hertz group of companies, approximately 40 years experience, comprised of 3 companies. Mark Hertz Associates, as I explained, Mark Hertz Build, as I explained, be glad to explain it to you again, Mark Hertz Company, Mark Hertz Environmental. If anyone has any suggestions what to do with MHD, Mark Hertz D, we'd like to hear it. If no one has any suggestions, I'm thinking of writing a book. And the book is, as we all know, Mark Hertz for Dummies. How can I help you? We are the lifeblood of your deals. We are the lifeblood of your refinancing. We'd love to be of help to you. Unless you want everyone to hear your question. Yeah, I'm standing here. I told them I'll also be at my booth for the next hour. Yeah. If anyone wants to ask any questions over here or at my booth, I'll be at my booth 10 minutes from when I go down from here.
My card, is she titled?
Oh, I mentioned you.